The night was black and silent over the Connecticut countryside in April of 1777. The American Revolution was not going well for the Patriots. The winter had been harsh, morale was low, and the British war machine seemed unstoppable. In the small town of Fredericksburg, New York, the Ludington family slept unaware that history was about to knock on their door. While the names of George Washington and Paul Revere are etched forever into the stone of American history, there is another name, a younger name, a braver name, that has too often been left in the shadows. Her name was Sybil Ludington. She was just 16 years old. On this night, she would ride twice as far as Paul Revere. She would ride through rain, through mud, and through darkness to save the Continental Army. She was the daughter of a colonel, but on that night, she became the general of the dark. To understand the magnitude of Sybil's ride, we must look at the desperate state of the war in 1777. The British were not just trying to win battles, they were trying to break the spirit of the rebellion. General William Howe had a strategy to cut off New England from the rest of the colonies. To do this, they needed to secure a crucial supply depot in Danbury, Connecticut. Danbury was filled with food, medicine, tents, and gunpowder that were essential for the American troops fighting in the Hudson Valley. If the British took Danbury, the American cause could collapse in the north. On the rainy evening of April 25th, 2,000 British troops landed at Campo Beach and began their march toward Danbury. The Redcoats were disciplined, well-fed, and heavily armed. The only thing standing between the British and the destruction of the Patriot supplies was a ragtag group of local militiamen scattered across miles of farmland. And the only person who could wake them up was a teenage girl. Colonel Henry Ludington was Sybil's father. He was the commander of the local militia regiment, but his men were not stationed in a barracks. They were farmers. They were blacksmiths and carpenters living on their own properties spread over a vast area of Putnam County, New York. To assemble them, Colonel Ludington would have to ride to each farm individually. But on the night of the 25th, a rider arrived at the Ludington home, exhausted and terrified. The British had reached Danbury. They were burning the supplies to the ground. The rider's horse was spent. He could go no further. Colonel Ludington needed to ride out to rally his men, but he had to stay back to organize the defense and prepare for the arrival of the British. He had no rider. He had no messenger. The fate of the Hudson Valley hung in the balance. From the shadows of the house, a young woman stepped forward. Sybil told her father she would go. She knew the terrain. She knew where every militiaman lived. And she had a horse named Star that could run through the night. Imagine the scene. A 16-year-old girl in the 18th century was expected to weave, to cook, and to tend to the home. War was the domain of men. But Sybil was not your typical girl. She was the eldest of 12 children, used to responsibility and hard work. She was tall for her age, strong and fiery. Her father looked at her, likely knowing the dangers that lurked in the woods. There were outlaws, there were British patrols, and there were loyalists who would not hesitate to harm a patriot's daughter. But there was no one else. Colonel Ludington nodded. He handed her a stick to use as a riding crop. She grabbed her coat. She saddled Star. And just as the rain began to pour, she kicked her heels into the horse's flanks and disappeared into the storm. The ride was roughly 40 miles long. To put that in perspective, Paul Revere's famous ride was about 15 miles. Sybil's journey was not on the paved roads of a modern city. It was a gauntlet of dirt paths, rocky trails, and dense forests. The rain was relentless. It turned the dirt into a slick, sucking mud that threatened to break a horse's leg. The darkness was absolute. There were no street lamps, no headlights, no moon visible through the storm clouds. Sybil rode through the night guided only by the flashes of lightning and her own memory of the land. She rode from Fredericksburg to Carmel, to Mahopac, to Stormville and back again. She had to knock on the doors of sleeping farmers. She had to shout through the rain, "The British are burning Danbury. Muster at Ludington's." She was alone in the blackness, risking her life for a country that did not yet exist. As the hours wore on, the physical toll on her body must have been immense. Riding a galloping horse for hours is a grueling athletic feat, even for a trained soldier. Sybil was a teenage girl without a saddle in some places, holding on for dear life as Star leaped over fallen logs and splashed through swollen creeks. The adrenaline of the mission kept her going, but fear must have been her constant companion. At one point in the journey, legend says she encountered a highwayman. This man, hiding in the brush, saw a young girl alone on a horse in the middle of the night. He likely thought she was easy prey. He emerged from the darkness, perhaps a pistol in his hand, ready to rob her or worse. But Sybil did not scream. She did not slow down. She raised her long stick, the one her father had given her, and she charged. She brandished it like a musket, bluffing the highwayman into thinking she was armed. She shouted to him to get out of her way. Startled by her ferocity, the man stepped aside. Sybil thundered past him, vanishing back into the night. She did not stop until she had delivered her warning. She knocked on doors until her knuckles were raw. She called out the names of men who might be afraid to fight. She was the voice of liberty in the storm. Because of her ride, nearly 400 militiamen were able to assemble by the next morning. Her father's regiment, along with other units from the area, marched toward Ridgefield to intercept the British retreating from Danbury. They caught up with the enemy. The Battle of Ridgefield was fierce. The Americans fought with a renewed ferocity, fueled by the knowledge that they had surprised the British. The British expected to march back to their ships unopposed. Instead, they were harried, shot at, and delayed. Although the British won the tactical battle, the strategic victory belonged to the Americans. The delay gave General Washington time to reinforce the Hudson Valley. It prevented the British from splitting the colonies in half. And it was all because a girl refused to sleep. Sybil arrived back at her home as the sun was rising. She had ridden all night. She had covered 40 miles through a storm. She was covered in mud, soaked to the bone, and utterly exhausted. But she had done it. Her men were marching. The alarm had been sounded. Later, when the war was won and the United States was a free nation, General George Washington himself came to the Ludington home. He stood in the same room where the exhausted rider had first set out, and he personally thanked Sybil for her courage. He acknowledged that what she did that night was extraordinary. He knew that the success of the revolution relied on the courage of ordinary citizens who did extraordinary things. For the rest of her life, Sybil Ludington lived in relative obscurity. She married a man named Edward Ogden. She raised a family. She did not seek fame or fortune for her ride. She did what she did because it was right. She did it because her father needed help, and her country needed help. She died in 1839 at the age of 77. It took history a long time to catch up to her. For decades, Paul Revere was the only name schoolchildren knew. But slowly, the story of the female Paul Revere began to emerge. Today, there are statues of Sybil Ludington in Carmel, New York, and in Washington, D.C. There are stamps honoring her face. Children learn her name alongside Paul Revere. Because the truth is, her ride was harder, longer, and more dangerous than his. She rode alone. She rode in the pouring rain. And she didn't get caught. She is the embodiment of American grit. She is proof that age and gender are no barriers to heroism. The story of Sybil Ludington is not just a story from a history book. It is a story for today. It is a reminder that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. You do not have to be a general or a soldier to change the world. You only need to see a problem and have the courage to try and fix it. Sybil saw that the alarm needed to be raised. She saw that her father was stuck. She saw that her neighbors were sleeping in danger. And instead of waiting for someone else to act, she acted. She mounted her horse. She rode into the dark. She faced the rain and the bandits and the exhaustion. She refused to let fear stop her. When we look at the challenges we face today, they might seem insurmountable. But if a 16-year-old girl on a horse can ride 40 miles through a storm to start a revolution, surely we can face our own challenges with the same bravery. Sybil Ludington's ride was a single night in a long war, but it was a night that mattered. It was a night that turned the tide. It was a night that showed the British that the American spirit could not be broken by rain, by distance, or by fear. Every time we drive through Putnam County, New York, and see the historical markers, we are walking in the footsteps of a giant. We are remembering the girl who rode to save a nation. The next time you hear the name Paul Revere, remember Sybil too. Remember the girl who rode twice as far. Remember the girl who fought for our freedom before she was even old enough to vote for it. The American Revolution was fought by soldiers, yes, but it was also fueled by the courage of teenagers like Sybil Ludington. She is a heroine, she is a legend, and she is an inspiration to us all to keep riding, no matter how dark the night gets. If you want to hear more unsung heroes of the past, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to like and share this video to help spread Sybil's story. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.